Alright, here we are again, talking to my phone, looking at auto parts, checking shit out. Got a new intake here. Thought somebody might be interested. You don't see many of these, but this is the first one I've had actually. What this is a Holley 300-110. It's a Keith Thornton signature series, which I couldn't find his fucking signature on it anywhere, but that's what they say. It's a Keith Thornton signature series. But what they did was the old Holley strip dominator come about in 76, and they pretty much got it right back then. They were far ahead of their time. It took everybody else a while to catch up to them, so they just kept making that old strip dominator they made in 76. You still buy that fucker new to this day. But they kept making it, and other companies started coming along and coming out with better and better shit. And it got to where the strip dominator was no longer king. So Holley got with Keith Thornton. He's a well-respected head porter, intake porter, engineer, heavily involved in the oval track motorsports, NASCAR modifieds and shit like that. But he's a good engine builder and he's a smart dude. He's definitely not an idiot. But he's who they worked with. They took the strip dominator and everything people been doing to them for years to modify them. They pretty much incorporated a lot of that shit into these already. So it's like pre-modified. And they took the prototype and Keith Thornton ported the hell out of it. And that's what they made the mold off of. So what you're getting is an ass-cast ported fucking intake. It's extremely nice to be out of the box. You don't see many intakes that clean. But people would extend these runners and shit back in the day. That was a proven way to pick up horsepower with strip dominators and shit. And he already got that incorporated in there. Got all this shit's radiused and good smooth transition. Got this wall kickback. Runners are all equalized. And these fucking things flow a lot. They'll support a whole lot of horsepower. It's an inch taller than a strip dominator. It's got bigger runners, longer runners, bigger diameter inside. And the old strip dominator had a little boss right here to where they used to have some kind of fucking to bolt something on there, or a vacuum fitting or something, but they did away with that. Did away with all vacuum ports and shit. There's none of that on these. This is strictly a race piece made for asphalt modifieds, dirt modifieds, and that kind of shit. Open wheel modifieds. that twin distributor hold downs, put your hold down where it's best for you. And you set it up with the 4-corner. You can run the water lines and shit. Keep the air bubbles at a minimal. Equalize the temperature and shit, so they say. Allegedly. This is the box it come in. There's your part number. In case you want one. They're not fucking cheap though. They're definitely expensive. So I heard they was making the original strip dominators a few years ago. I heard they were casting them in China. That was heartbreaking because I've been buying them for decades. But these Keith Thornton units here, they're fucking, they are Buddy Bar. So good old USA. So that's where they cast a lot of shit actually. Buddy Bar. That's where they cast Edelbrock shit. Or, I don't know if Edelbrock does or not, but I know there's a lot of companies using Buddy Bar. AFR does. It's a nice transition into them runners. See, it's a fucking, you bound an ass cast ported intake, more or less. These things definitely a step up over the original strip dominators. American made, so you ain't got your, some of them Chinese strip dominators, so much tin in them and shit, they rust. Fucking aluminum rust. I don't think you'll have that problem with one of these. It's a well-built piece. Fucking price on these things was through the roof just a few years ago. They've come down a little bit, but they're still, Super Victors and shit are cheaper. But these make more power, which that's all relative. And you can't say one intake's better than another intake on every fucking engine ever made, because one engine liable to favor one design more than another. So, but on the type of engine I'm building here, which is high winding small block Chevy with relatively high flow cylinder heads and a big roller cam and high compression and ample carburation, this intake works fine. But you wouldn't want to put this on your stock 305. It's all application specific. And from what I'm trying to do, this engine with these parts is capable of well over 600 horsepower. 355 cubic inch. It'd make over 600 horsepower. So that's actually what I'm trying to do. I call it 550 plus for the plebes, but in all actuality, I used to build dirt track engines for a living and shit, and I've seen shitloads of them on dynos, and I know how much power they make and what parts to use to get there, what does what. You fucking can only build small block Chevy so many ways, and build hundreds of them, you start to notice patterns and shit. You figure out what works and what don't. See, at one shop, most of our customers were local oval track, dirt track racers and boat racers, a few drag racers. You had people with fan bolts needing hardcore big blocks and shit for swamp boats. Can't imagine what they needed them for, but built several high horse air bolts. I'm from Louisiana. Boats are popular down there. It's a lot of water. Built a lot of big block jet boat engines and shit too. But I built a bunch of these small block Chevys, and you ain't even gotta stroke them. You can build a 600 plus horse 350 with a stock stroke crank, 5.7 rod, standard issue shit. Just put a big enough cam in that motherfucker, put some heads on it to flow, put you a big old honking intake on that motherfucker. These heads I'm using, these are 1987 bow tie heads. They flow 307 CFM intake, 226 exhaust. They're like 50 cc chambers. They're milled. They have springs in them that have 250 pounds seat pressure, and it's about 650 open. These look like stock 70s small block Chevy heads. You put these on an engine, you'd never know the difference. Painted black on a black engine. Look like some old 70s smogger heads. These fuckers, they'll support 650 fucking horsepower. Look like stock heads doing it. But they got some 1.5650 valve springs in them, and Del West 208 1650 valves, and they got a ton of money sunk in these fucking things. These come off a race car. They were never on a street car. They were a money's no object car. Back in the day, they're obsolete now, but they work fine for a drag car. 307 CFM. Even if you go with the old 2 horse per CFM theory, that's fucking 614 horse capability. But an engine like this, it'll exceed that. It'll make more than 2 horse per CFM. This engine will exceed 100% volumetric efficiency at 7,000-8,000 RPM. So it could make 625 plus horsepower. Them heads and the cam and intake and all the shit I'm using. I got a good strong bottom end, H-beam rods and all good shit. It's a 4-bolt 72 350 block. I'm going to use a 2-inch tapered combo spacer and either an 850 or a 1000 CFM 4150 carb, or I might stick a fucking Dominator on this bitch. See how it acts with a 1050 CFM Barry Grant Dominator on it. Holley says Dominators should be used on engines with more than 550 horse, and I'm gonna be well over that, so I think a Dominator probably pick it up. It might pick up 10-15 horsepower over a 850 or a 1000 4150 base. Its Dominators pick up power from more than just the fucking CFM. That's a misconception. What shines about Dominators is they spread the butterflies apart so you get a straighter shot to the runners and shit. They're laid out better than a conventional carburetor. They're race carburetors, so they were designed with one thing in mind, and it wasn't gas mileage. So these are the ultimate fucking race carburetors. It's the old Holley Dominators. This one's had a lot of shit done to it back in the day. It's an older piece, but it's very low mile, been on drag cars only. So I might try it on there and see how it acts. And I've narrowed down. See, I got my 307 CFM, 226 CFM bow tie heads. I'm going to be running about 12 to 1, maybe a little over 12 to 1 compression. I got my block square deck to 9-inch. It's zero decked. I'm going to use a 38 thick with a 4.125 bore with a 38 thick head gasket. So it'll be 38 quench. And I'm going to use this camshaft here. And what's in here is a crane solid roller. There's your part number. Advertised duration 312-322. At 50, 272, 282. And it's 650, 641 gross lift. And a 110 load separation. And that runs with a 244 pounds at 2-inch installed height. Valve spring. 641 pounds at 1380. 4400 to 8200 RPM range. The heads are set up. They're about 250 pounds, and I think they're about 1950 installed. I think they're like 650, 660 open. So they'll be right there in the ballpark of what this cam would need. So them heads would work with this cam perfectly. I might stick that in it. Or I might stick this fucking Herbert I got. It is a 305, 310 advertised, 260, 270 at 50, 630, 630 gross valve lift, 106 load separation, uses 25 thousandths lash, 104 center line, And it's got a cast gear to run a regular distributor gear on. It's a billet roller, but it's got a press-on cast gear, so that's a nice feature. Just not have to worry about a bronze gear and shit with it. It's a 106 low separation, so it's a choppy fucker. And I got a Crane 1.55 ratio rockers I'm using with this combo. And I did the math. I think it comes out to like 651 lift. And I'd add 2 degrees duration, 262, 272 at 50. But it'll help. And they're brand new old school Crane gold roller rockers. They'll work. So there's my 2 cam choices I'm gonna have to decide between. I'm going to use this intake. I also have an original Edelbrock Victor. Not a Super Victor, not a Victor Jr., just a Victor. It's an Edelbrock Victor. They made them in the 80s. And they're a real good piece. It looks like a Victor Jr., but they got bigger runners and shit, and they're made for more hardcore shit. They're pretty rare, actually. But it's ported out to allegedly to a 1206. Let's see how it fits. I might try to use it just because it's shorter. And if I do use it on these heads, I'll use this intake on these dirt modified ported Sportsman 2s that got tucked away. That'll work real good with this intake. But that old Victor, it's like a 1982 mono unit. It looks like a Victor E. I think it's what become the Victor E. This was before they called them a Victor E, which was like the intake of choice for super stockers for many years, because they had such fat ass runners and they're low profile, so you could get them under a flat hood. Classes that require you to run a flat hood, so they're ideal for that shit, but they make a whole lot of horsepower. So get that cleaned up and evaluated, and that might be the way to go. But so far I'm thinking this big Keith Thornton Holley is going to be the way to go. Its runners are they're 122 diameter and like 210 tall, so they're pretty close to what the heads are already. So it'd be a close match. And that intake will be a good match to the flow of the heads and the cam and compression and shit. And it's gonna be a pretty rowdy drag engine. It's only gonna be a 355, but I could probably get a gutted G-body in the 9s with it, NA. No turbo required. Just a good old 350. There it is, Holley 300 110.